Hello, hello there, everyone. How are you? Y'all caught me dancing to the music in my head as we got started, right? Alrighty there. So glad to be here today. I am still sounding a little froggy as you hear, but it's going to be all good. I've got coffee because I've always got coffee, and I've got my tea. For those of you who are joining for the very first time, welcome. My name is Patricia Hayes. This is Coffee Time Career Chat, where we talk about all things regarding your professional and career development and some personal stuff too, because we are not flat Stanleys. We are multi-dimensional people, and there are lots of things that play into how we go and grow as professionals. This is a conversation that's directed at professional women in particular who are looking to up level in their careers and in their businesses, and focusing on career development, on building stronger professional relationships and networking authentically, let me say, and all of those great things. And my name is Patricia Hayes. I am an executive advisor, career empowerment coach, authentic networking strategist, and I'm super glad to be here. Starting this here fresh month. Are we ready, y'all? A fresh month and a fresh quarter. So here is what I have as an offering for you for this month. We're going to be talking about transitions, all things transitioning when it comes to your professional growth, your professional development. And when you're transitioning, whether it's with your business, with your job, more than likely, we're going to be talking about that during this here month. And I'm super excited about that. Because there are some things that, I've probably hinted at down through the years or have shared with some of our colleagues have gone through. But, I'm going to kind of get a little more in depth and invite your questions because we have an extra month, we have an extra Monday in this month. So I got to figure out what to do with that. And maybe it's going to be answering the questions that have come in over the course of this time. So feel free to send comments or to hit me up privately in the DMs. I welcome your input. So let's jump right in because we're talking about transitions. And today we are talking about specifically that transitions are tough. So you have to be prepared, right? And I know the first thing that some people will say will be like, well, I mean, if it's a transition, the very nature of that may mean that I don't necessarily know what's about to happen. We're going to talk about that in a second because most of the time we know. Most of the time there is something that's going on, and so we know. But before we get too far along, the other piece that I want to make sure and mention is that every time we talk about these transitions, I'm also going to give you an empowered action. I'm going to do that up front so that you understand where we're flowing to and the rationale. And the empowered action that goes with this transition about being prepared is you have to get uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. Transitions are tough, and there's going to be a lot of challenges that come your way. There will be things that you're like, what in the world? And part of it is just plain being uncomfortable and acknowledging it as you're going through what you're going through. Okay. So that's the empowered action for this one today is just start getting uncomfortable, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if you've been through any significant transitions in your career or business, you know what this means. All right. You already know. For those of you who haven't yet, this is going to help you to start laying the groundwork for that. So, yes, let's see. I have someone who says I'm transitioning from a career in politics to, I don't know. Perfect. Listen in. Okay. Listen in. Because this is going to be a great series for you. Okay. So the first thing, like I said, people are like, how do I prepare when, it's unknown? I don't even know what I'm going to be doing. Here's the first tip. The first tip is you have to recognize the trigger that changes on the horizon. Because the reality is there's always a trigger. There's always something that starts making you realize that sometimes it's something pretty blatant, right? Other times it's just little hints. And so here are some examples. So some examples of acknowledging that change is on the horizon is there's an event at work, right? Office politics, been there, done that one. Like in getting caught up in some politics, you're like, whoa, 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 what happened here? Denial of a promotion, right? This is a most common type of trigger that people will get, is something that they were going after and they don't get it. And they're like, what do I do next? Right? That is a very clear transition point, because even if you stay where you are, you know something's different and you have to decide what to do with that. Notice of potential layoffs. So when, a company's about to start downsizing, they're giving you notice of that. You know that that's a potential transition point, even if you're not one of the ones to get laid off, right? That can be, people are like, well, that's not a transition for me. Yes, it is. If there's a notice of layoffs in your company or organization, you don't have to be the person laid off to be caught up in the middle of a transition, because you will then also be forced to start thinking about, what do I do if, or do I stick around for this? So it is a transition point for you. Glass ceiling, when you realize you've gone as far as you can go in the organization that you're in. So you're like, what do I do next, right? A couple of other transition points. How about that unexplained urgency to do something different, right? You just get this, you're like, it's not because something bad has happened, whatever. You're just like, you're starting to feel unsettled, and maybe it's time to move on and to do something else, okay? And then the one that really messes people up is just a feeling in your gut. When you're just like, everything's cool, I don't have any problems, I'm treated well, and I'm just kind of like, Don't ignore the feeling in your gut. All right. If you have that feeling, it is for a reason. Do not ignore it. All right. All of those things and any variation of that are a part of recognizing that change is on the horizon, because there's that trigger point, right? So the question for you is, what is that trigger point, or what has been that trend? If you're already in the midst of it, what was the trigger point for you? It's very important for you to acknowledge that, because how you respond to it moving forward is going to be based on what the trigger was, right? If you are responding to a trigger because that's a notice of potential layoffs, that is going to be a different reference point than someone who's happy where they are, nothing big is going on, but they just got a feeling in their gut that it's time to go. All right. You're going to respond. Your urgency is going to be different. Some of those things, some of the strategies we talk about are going to be probably the same, but your response times and different things like that may increase, may shift as a result. All right. So then the second thing, y'all know how I am about reflection. You're going to be tired of hearing me about it, but it's super important. Set aside time to explore your feelings and the possibilities. All right. What do I mean? Well, you cannot go through a transition without acknowledging how the whole thing is making you feel, right? You could be angry and aggravated about the things you've been dealing with in your workplace. That is going to play into how you address this transition. It's going to play into whether this transition is going to be hard or harder, right? Because those are the options you're leaving for yourself. And trust you me, I have done them all. I've experienced many of these situations here, and they are different. Okay. And your feelings and how you are feeling about it does play into it, and can feed how the transition goes and how it develops along the way. So sometimes the quicker we get through acknowledging that we're angry, that we're upset, and dealing with it, then the quicker we can get on to the important business of, what am I going to do next? Okay. So address your feelings. Do not ignore them. Do not let them blow up to, later on. It's a part of the process. We're going to talk about process next week, but it is a part of the process. Okay. So just remember we said the empowered action is to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that is part of it. All right. And the possibilities. We oftentimes get so caught up in the angst around a transition that we don't give ourselves proper time to actually sit down and think about what can really be possible. Not from the perspective of scarcity, of, oh my God, what am I going to do? What if there's no place for me to go? What if we are in a recession? We're not in a recession. There's not enough jobs out there for the things I want to do. All of that. Let all that go for a second, right? Sit somewhere quietly, get a pen and a piece of paper in your hand, get that journal that you need to keep during this process. I highly recommend it. And write down, this is a time of transition. This is a time of change. This is a great time to say, if I could do anything I wanted to right now, what would it be? That is often a very scary thing for people to do, because most people don't consider a transition, particularly if it's a difficult one, as an opportunity. And it is. We're going to talk about that as part of the series as well. It's an opportunity. So how do you help yourself through that? By starting to identify what the possibilities are. This is an ideal time to consider, I can go do whatever I want to next. And that in and of itself is often what leads people to kind of contract as opposed to expand, because that scares them, right? The thought that I could do whatever I want to do next is, for some people, very scary, because maybe they haven't really thought of it in those terms yet. Maybe they haven't, explored that. It's like, well, no, this is the path I'm supposed to be on. And so I have to keep doing that. You don't have to, right? You can do whatever you want. The question is, what is it? And if you don't sit down and explore what those things are, just laying them out, right? Just laying them out. It's not saying you're going to do it. There's no commitment to this yet. We're going to talk about making a commitment. You can do whatever you want. What might it be? If this is the time to start laying the foundation for a new pathway, that could be the thing. Now, you don't have to necessarily know exactly where you're going to end up, but you can be like, well, I've got this chance. Let's go see where this goes. Let's see where it leads. One of my coaches, she has done this. It's just the most fabulous story, where she's literally taken off. I think it's been like 18 months. And I think she's just renewed that. So she's an entrepreneur. She's had several successful businesses, but she's looking to make a major transition in how she approaches her work. And so her and her husband, they've sat down, they've discussed it, they've made adjustments accordingly so that she can have the time to fully explore what it is she does next and how she does it without the angst, right? They've planned for it financially, they've planned for it with their family and all of this, and to allow those things to flow. And it's a super powerful position to be in. And you don't have to have all of that in order to have that similar positioning, right? You could be in a place where, like, maybe you're leaving a position that it's been a little difficult and it's time to go, or whatever. Whatever it is the point is you can do whatever you want to do next. The question is whether you're going to allow yourself to do it. All right. Will you allow yourself? That's the question. And this is the opportunity to start thinking through that. All right. So set aside that time. The third thing that I want to make sure that we say is you have to find a confidant or a coach. I don't know how people try to make it through major transitions without talking to someone. And I don't mean talking to your girlfriend or your spouse or whatever, just to have a gripe session, right? We all do that. I am not saying don't do that. We all need to do that. It's a part of the process again, right? But I'm talking about sitting down and having a conversation with someone who will feed you, who first listen objectively, right? Not because they have some stake in the game. Like your family has a stake in it. They're invested in you. Your friends are invested in some kind of way, right? Um, but someone who's not vested in that way, other than to be a support mechanism for you and to help you think through what happens next. Some people are blessed to have solid mentors or confidants where they can go to them during transition points. Other people may not. And if you don't have that person or haven't developed it, that's a networking relationship building tool. We will talk about that as well later on about how important it is to have established those professional relationships that you can rely on in times of transition. But the other piece of it is sometimes you just got to make the investment and you got to pay someone to be your sounding board. That's what coaches are for, or paid mentors are for, right? Because they're coming in to help you through that process of thinking, not just to take an action. I tell you, I do this one-on-one coaching all the time for a while now. And it never ceases to amaze me that in reality, the majority of the time, it's making the shift in our thinking that we spend a lot of time on, not just the strategies of what to do next. Like half the work is literally shifting how you think about a situation, getting yourself in place to be able to take the action. Because I can feed you all the strategies in the world, but if you are not ready to take action, it means nothing. Means absolutely nothing. Right? So that's that part about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Is shifting your thinking about how you want to approach things, how things should approach. Like if you haven't made a transition in the workplace in 10 years, well, things have shifted dramatically, not just in 10 years, just in the last 2 years alone, right? So these are things that we have to get ourselves ready for. And you need to be able to have conversations with people in order to do it. So whether it's one-on-one with, with a, a coach, a mentor, a trusted colleague, definitely someone who can keep a confidence, right? Because there are some things you may be needing to shift that's going to involve some sensitive information or what it is you're thinking about doing next. That's that whole thing, right? You don't need someone who's going to go run off and tell your business, and then it turns out that's not even something you're interested in doing, right? This is why it's really important to be very discerning about who you choose to share that information with and what types, right? Sometimes I have a lovely dear friend who, I discuss some of those things with, but it's really always in the context for me in a spiritual respect, because there was just so much going on. This is when I say sometimes there's a personal piece to it as well that you're shifting. And so sometimes it's being able to have that conversation with someone, not so much about the actual job, but like about how you are dealing with the situation personally. Okay. Not the job, not the business, but just the things that are going on around you that you may not be able to share with someone else because they don't get it. They don't understand. Or they're vested in it. So they're like, oh, you shouldn't be worried about that. That's not what you necessarily need to hear. You just need someone who's going to listen, maybe ask you some strategic questions and provide the support that you need. Okay. So those are the three things about how you can be prepared as you're getting ready to go through a transition, or even if you're already in the midst of one. Make sure you recognize the trigger that changes on the horizon. Go back and look at that thing, right? I have had several situations where I've been in the middle of it or even at the end of it, and I had to go back and sit down and really think about the trigger, because some of them were not so pleasant. And I'm like, how did I allow this to affect me? What do I need to learn from that so that the next time I don't let it affect me that way, right? There's a reason and a rationale for it. So again, in that part of shifting your perspective and how you approach the situation, all right, depending on what it is. The second one is set aside that time to explore your feelings about it and the possibilities that can develop as a result. And then lastly, find a confidant, find a coach, get ready to have some difficult conversations, not just because it's about the transition being tough itself, but also that whole thing of what in the world do I do next and how do I approach it kind of conversations. All right. This is when we get into, and we'll talk some more about, and I've had conversations about before, whether if it's a one-on-one, whether you're joining a mastermind, where you're getting support. That's what we're really talking about here. Get the support you need. All right. Get the support you need to help you through this, along this journey, because it's a journey. Recognize it for what it is, and let's get ready to make some things happen, right? I'm super excited. Okay, so if you want to know where we are headed, let me tell you so you can know. All right, so where we're headed next is we're going to talk about transitions, our process, how you don't want to short cycle yourself or short cycle the process. We're going to talk about transitions being about growth. So you need to do the work to maximize your opportunities. And finally, we're going to talk about transitions are full of opportunities and how we need to leverage the time and the resources accordingly. So that's where we're going this month with this conversation about transitions. So make sure that you hit the little buttons to make sure that you can tune in or come back and watch the replays, whether it's here on LinkedIn, Facebook, or on YouTube. Please, please, please feed me your questions. I really do think that I may make that last Monday all about, make it specifically about following up on questions and experiences that people have had during their transitions. I think that is going to be super valuable to work through it. So share those with me. If you're not willing to share that openly in the comments, just hit me up in the DMs. I will absolutely keep confidences, but I want this to be helpful and beneficial to you all. Okay. And as a part of all of that, we're also on every other kind of Wednesday because, I do the interviews. So we're also going to talk about transitions in terms of your professional network as well. So we're going to make it a whole package that you will be able to check in on during this month. I'm super excited about it. Okay. And keep an eye out for the 5 steps to career success in any economy. I've had to make adjustments because unfortunately I spent most of September sick in one fashion or another. So I've had to postpone it. So I will be following back up. If you are interested in that workshop, please let me know as well. It's going to tie in nicely here. It looks like it may get pushed back to the beginning of November is what I'm thinking at this point, but I will certainly let you know because I think it's going to be a great conversation to have and to get to work after this transitions conversation. Okay, that's what I have for you. Hope that you have a fantastic rest of the week, and I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.